Welcome to Breathe California TV. I'm Terry Trumbull, a volunteer. We'd love to have you come help us. Each year, Breathe California helps about 100,000 people with breathing difficulties in the South Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area. Today, we'll be talking with Josué Medellín-Azuara. He's a professor at UC Merced, but he also works with a California Water Research Institute at UC Davis. Maybe we'll get him to tell us a little bit about this when we talk to him. But for an entire history of California, the most important political issue has been our policy on water. And hopefully a few facts will help you with understanding this issue when you get a chance to vote on policies or on candidates who have to come up with them. So see you in about 30 seconds.
The different therapeutic methods that we can help our very low socioeconomic status clients who have no alternatives, no anything, and there's still about 15 different resources we got out of this that if you have no resources, no service connection, you can still get aid.
That they are connected, one encourages the other, and that the process of change from backing off from the tobacco is the same as backing off from any other addictive drug.
Everyone can benefit from this training that we just were offered today. I would not take it back.
Welcome back. This is Breathe California TV. I'm Terry Trumbull. Our focus is generally on preventing damage to your lungs. Medical system seems to be focused on treating damage, but today we're going to be talking a lot about what our water system does to impact our health. So our guest is Josué Medellín-Azuara from UC Merced. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much for the invitation, Terry.
So he's coming to us from Davis, where he works for a research institute there, as well as his teaching position. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that research institute that you help with?
Absolutely. Yes, I'm a professor at the UC Merced, Civil and Environmental Engineering. However, I keep an affiliation as an associate director of the Center for Watershed Sciences of UC Davis, which is dedicated to interdisciplinary study of critical water challenges in California, focusing on environmental and economic sustainable solution for managing rivers, lakes, and estuaries.
So when I visited that research institute a few months ago, I was given a packet of information on water in California by the Public Policy Institute of California, and I think you have a role with them as well.
That is correct. I serve as an adjunct research fellow in the Water Policy Center of the Public Policy Institute of California, and is an independent think tank that produces policy materials to help various topics around water.
So sounds to me like UC Merced is lucky to have you. I taught classes in environment at Santa Clara University for 17 years, and they had no one doing water-related technical issues like yours in engineering. So it's just hard for me to fathom, given how important water policy's been in this state, not to have that as part of an environmental-oriented faculty. So you and I talked about some topics beforehand. In particular, I've always been surprised that nobody understands that moving water around uses a lot of energy. Why don't you talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely. Yes, there's some energy involved in water. So according to the Department of Water Resources, around 12% of the total energy used in California is related to water. But this is the surprising figure. About 88% of that energy used in water is in the end user. It's mostly heating, recirculating, and cooling. And so most of the water is from the end user. Then another 10% is just treating for potable water, and another 2% is wastewater treatment, which also uses some energy.
So I know you're an expert on agricultural water use. Would you call them an end user in pumping water from a canal that supplies them to get it out into their fields?
That is also a use of energy, and there are areas in which pumping can be very intense. So it is definitely a source of, an end use of energy in agriculture.
I had served under Jerry Brown heading the state environmental agency for 6 years, and the last guy I interviewed with was Jerry Brown's chief of staff in his first set of terms, named Gray Davis, who, as you're aware, became our governor for 5 years here. And I sent him a note, not that I ever got any response out of it, saying that we ought to do everything we can to switch over the pumping of water into use of alternatives like solar or wind. He was governor 20 years ago. Is there's any validity to what I was saying back then now? Or are we still heavily reliant on diesel fuel?
Well, a lot of the energy use, as you probably know, is evolving. There's this pledge to reduce carbon, emissions, to the carbon footprint of the state, and a lot is moving towards solar energy generation. So there's been some progress on that, but it's still a lot of energy use in the state in heating, cooling, and other uses.
So for us at Breathe California, getting rid of diesel is really important because it's the devil incarnate of air pollution. It's far nastier than your car is, even though mobile sources are 85% of our air pollution problems most of the time, but that percentage drops when we have wildfires. Go ahead if you want.
No, it's that is an important remark. A lot of air impacts can impact from burning fossil fuels. A lot of it from vehicles and some activities, including agriculture. So the Central Valley, as you probably know, is an area which air quality is deteriorated a lot compared to other areas in the state where some progress has been done as well.
I grew up in Sacramento and used the Delta a lot because my dad was a water pollution control engineer, and he loved fishing. So we went there a lot, but in Sacramento, we had a lot of problems with air pollution from lignite, organic materials sloughing off from the islands of the Delta. Do you want to touch on that problem and explain what causes it? Or better you than me.
My understanding is that soils oxidize, so there's some subsidence due to that peat soil oxidation processes, and that brings a set of issues that increases some of the pressure on the levees that protect the islands from flooding, and that might have some impacts on maintenance costs of such levees, and also risks for agriculture and populations living in the delta. So those are some of the impacts. There's obviously some air quality impacts, but I think the flood risk down there is a major concern. With regard to the Central Valley, some of the there are some state programs that help reduce emissions from agricultural equipment, and then they have some sort of grant programs in which that carbon footprint can be reduced by updating equipment or switching from diesel to electricity or other sources of energy.
So my impression is that the levees were largely put up 150 years ago by farmers who wanted to start using the land in the Delta. And it's very surprising if I drive along the Delta on a levee that the water level in the river or the branches of the Delta seem to be 10 feet or so above ground level. Is that one of the problems you were talking about?
Yes, that again, just being below sea level puts additional pressure on the levees, protecting the islands from flooding, and a careful consideration of the investment decisions on those levees has always been in the policy discussions.
Yeah, then one of the things we're real worried about, because we're so short on water, is if those levees are poorly constructed and break, we may have as much as 2 years worth of water going into the island because it's so low compared to the water level.
Yeah, so one of the issues, is that if an island gets flooded, this creates some places just like a bowl that is ready to receive water, and then some salinized water from the bay can come and then make the quality of the water that is pumped from the delta to southern area, to areas south of the delta in the states, such as Southern California, and agriculture in Central Valley. And that is just having that water that came through the bay and salinized water from pumping can make the quality of such water not suitable for uses in irrigation, or increase substantially the treatment cost of such.
So for our audience, which is San Jose and Campbell, the water in the Delta is quite important to us. There's a reservoir, if you're on your way to Los Banos, called San Luis, which is the source for much of the water in San Jose and Campbell. And one of these Delta Island breaks and we're short on water, it's pretty disastrous. So as we'll be back with you in about 30 seconds after this public service announcement.
It's given me a chance to go out and be with people who has the same problem, and it helps you to manage your life better too, because you hear different things from each person, and it's just been really helpful in many ways.
Welcome back. This is Breathe California TV. We're talking with Josué Medellín-Azuara, who's a water engineering expert, professor at UC Merced. Talk a little bit about agriculture, are they moving, you think, to be more sensitive to the energy and water use we're talking about? I'm talking about areas of using more techniques to conserve on water, or switching over to energy from sources that are not using fossil fuel.
Yes, there's a few themes that you touch on. And agriculture uses roughly 40% of all water use in the state. 10% goes to cities, to population, and roughly the other 50% goes to the environment. That's the scenic rivers and other uses. So now California agriculture is a powerhouse, as you know. It's ranked first in the United States and the food basket for many fruits, nuts, and vegetables in the US and worldwide. And it uses water. And I think a lot of progress has been made in using low volume irrigation technology when it makes economic sense. But many of the things that one should think in irrigation efficiency is that farmers apply water for a variety of purposes, including growing crops. And they also need to flush some of the salts in the soil. And reduced volume irrigation not necessarily translate into more water available for other uses. In fact, sometimes what happens is that with the water savings, some areas, irrigated areas, are expanded. So when we are thinking about irrigation, we should always think about from a water balance perspective. We should always think in what is happening and with what is the fate of water. Some portion will go from the crop and it will evaporate. That is called consumptive use. And some portion will be runoff, and some other portion will recharge groundwater. So that is those are some of the terms we should thinking. And again, agriculture has made big steps in the state in converting to lower volume irrigation. But some areas there's been an overexpansion of some crop varieties, and that merits some attention, of course.
So Santa Clara County was the first major area in the country to experience saltwater intrusion and other groundwater related problems, and residents may be driving around here and not realize, but a lot of things that look like lakes or ponds are recharge here, because we have a very aggressive program to take either in-stream water or some sewage treatment uses and put them in ponds to recharge groundwater. So tell us a little bit about groundwater. Obviously, it's something that when you're in a drought like we are now is more prone to get pumped. So
yeah, that is correct. So it is when there's a shortage of surface water, just like last year, and that in many past droughts, what happens is that farmers turn into groundwater, and that is a good strategy. And on the other side, what is been happening is that we've been pumping way too much, even in years in which are not dry, and that has caused some issues with land subsidence, with dry wells, with impacts to groundwater dependent ecosystems. So there's been a few impacts that have happened due to this overpumping of groundwater, but it's an extremely valuable resource to cope with droughts. So in 2014, the drought, in a way, I think, catalyzed what is this 2014 Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, which now requires the groundwater basins to reach sustainability in what is pumped out and what is recharged in by year 2040. And recharge is definitely one of the strategies that has proven to be promising to achieve such balance. So things like you mentioned in Santa Clara or in other areas in the state are giving some fruition, both for urban systems and agricultural systems.
Yeah, our problem was so bad that in 1958, roughly, they created the Santa Clara Valley Water District and gave them authority to control pumping from groundwater. So I think we've done a pretty good job of maintaining the levels of groundwater, meaning how deep down you had to go for groundwater. But when I was teaching, I used to tell my students about driving to LA and stopping for lunch at Harris Ranch and seeing a sign where saying the ground level was 35 feet higher up on a pole there. And I gather San Joaquin Valley has been so desperate that there's been a lot of subsidence, like you mentioned.
Yeah, that is correct. And that creates some issues. One issue is obviously some of the shallow wells drying with the overpumping, particularly the domestic, the rural, small rural domestic systems. And on the other hand, some of the clays that are underneath in the soil can compact and that compaction is not reversible. So that creates subsidence, but also decreases the amount of water that can be replenished in the aquifer. So the most alarming thing on subsidence is also infrastructure damage, because some of the canals lose the slope that they're designed a slope that will be able to move water at a certain rate from point A to point B, and that causes some problems with water deliveries, and the repairs can be very costly. That is the example of the Fry and Kern Canal. Some of you probably have heard in the in news.
Yeah, my recollection is we had a ballot measure for water projects, including the Oroville Dam, a few years ago, and Friant Dam was in that for subsidence problems that had caused settling of the dam. So I assume it probably couldn't be used. Here in this county, it's just an earthquake problem, but the newspaper just had an article on the bill for repairing Anderson Reservoir, which is more than all our other 7 reservoirs combined, is doubled, and it was like 2.5 billion because it hadn't been originally constructed in an earthquake safe way. So I wanted to read something to you and just get your comment. Yesterday, the San Jose Mercury wrote an editorial entitled "State Must Stop Burying Head in Winter Snow." And it said, future generations will not look kindly on our leaders' complete failure to strategically address the state's water source shortages, which could only get worse with climate change. Want to comment on that?
Yeah, I missed a little bit the first part, but if I'm not wrong, it talks a little bit about the fate of the snowpack, and what is happening is that we are more likely to have more frequent and intense droughts and floods, we might get this whiplash of years. We've seen some of that in this just couple of years. We had a very severe drought just in 2021, and now we're seeing a lot of rain. In 2017, it was the end of the 2012-2016 drought, and it was one of the wettest years on record for the Sacramento Valley. So we will have this whiplash, and because of such, there's opportunities to store water, to recharge water underground, and oftentimes it's thought that raising the reservoirs to increase storage or creating new reservoirs is the only solution. It's really depends on the context and depends on the place, but there's plenty of storage of water underground, and that is an overlooked resource or is use of natural infrastructure, I would call it. So managed aquifer recharge is one of the most promising alternatives to secure water for future droughts. One aspect I forgot to mention was that in this 2040 time horizon for reaching sustainability in recharge and extractions, to achieve that, it can only happen by reducing total water use. We have an overdraft of 2 million acre-foot of water per year. So that will require some reductions in the irrigated area. And so there might be some strategic land repurposing that might have to happen in order to achieve such, and managed aquifer recharge can help with that.
So we have a potential audience of 1.1 million, even though I think the chances are fairly good that they're not all watching us. But we haven't done much to talk about conservation reuse by residential users. We have about 1 minute left, so give enough time for yourself to do a summary at the end of that.
Sure. Well, in 1 minute, this 10% of all water use is residential, and about 40% is landscape irrigation. So if you want a big way of cutting total use in cities, and that is one way, is just doing a smart irrigation and also modernizing some of the appliances to more water efficient ones. But a lot of progress has been made in cities in Southern California and the north part of the state, but a lot more to do. So every little helps.
So we've been talking with Josué Medellín-Azuara of UC Merced about water policy and water technical details. We appreciate it immensely, and hope our audience will watch the next set of shows that we come up with. Thanks again.